Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. The Canadian Armed Forces are now providing airlift and logistics support to assist in the evacuation of residents from Pimicikamak Cree Nation, located in Cross Lake, Manitoba, and residents from Matthias Kalom First Nation. Royal Canadian Air Force aircraft departed Winnipeg and Trenton on Thursday morning to begin the air evacuation. 17,500 residents in northern Manitoba are evacuating as a number of wildfires burn closer to their communities. Several First Nations are affected. Reporter Sav Jonesa has more.
This video shows a clear picture of what Pimicikamak Cree Nation residents are experiencing while fleeing wildfires raging near their northern Manitoba community. It's a long wait to safety with little movement as evacuees waited for a small ferry to cross the river to Norway House Cree Nation and return for more. William Thomas took the footage.
It is a pretty historic event that happened, a mass evacuation.
Pimicikamak declared a state of emergency and began proactively evacuating some of its 7,000 residents on May 23rd. Pimicikamak Cree Nation Chief David Monias says he asked the province to call for help from the Canadian Armed Forces, but was told the province needs to exhaust resources before that could happen. Though armed forces were deployed yesterday to the region, Monias says governmental bureaucracy delayed what could have been a smooth evacuation.
By the time they sent the planes, only 2 of the 3 could land because the smoke was pretty bad. So we sent the people out to Norway House, and because Norway House doesn't have a bridge, they were bottlenecked at that ferry. People waiting up to 9 hours to get on that ferry to go across to safety. 9 hours. People without food, people without water.
It's been a devastating wildfire season throughout the province. Now 17,500 residents from across northern Manitoba are headed south to safety, with the majority en route by car roughly 650 kilometers south to Winnipeg. Community centers, arenas, and soccer fields will be turned into shelters with tents and cots. Premier Wab Kinew says it's the largest evacuation the province has seen in most people's living memory.
For the first time, it's not a fire in one region. We have fires in every region at the same time. And that is a sign of a changing climate that we are going to have to adapt to.
The area burned so far is almost 3 times the usual size for an entire year, but in just 1 month. First Nations are largely affected due to their rural locations. First Nations leaders met in Winnipeg today to discuss next steps and advocate for their communities.
We call upon the whole country to be able to stand with us, because this kind of massive evacuation is unprecedented. It has never happened before.
Officials say it's too early to tell how long people will be displaced from their homes, but that the state of emergency will be in effect for 30 days. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And additional communities in Manitoba are being cleared out due to smoke and wildfires. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew provided an update on the situation and efforts on Friday afternoon. Additional resources are also being brought in, including 100 firefighters and 25 managers from the United States. Kinew says the situation is very serious. He said a final evacuation of Flin Flon has occurred, a community of more than 5,000 people.
The only folks remaining on the ground are the firefighters and folks from the Office of the Fire Commissioner and RCMP who are there to battle the blaze. We do expect some very, very challenging conditions in Flin Flon and in the surrounding community, particularly later this afternoon. The situation there is very, very serious, and we are doing everything that we can to preserve life, but also to preserve people's livelihoods and homes in the region. Because of that same threat, we have also made the decision to evacuate Baker's Narrows, the provincial parks and cottage country in the area there. The community of Sheridan is surrounded by wildfire, and so value protection and firefighters continue to hold it off there in the region. The community of Bassett also evacuated today in the more eastern part of the province. Yesterday, we had a fire start in Split Lake, Tatasqueyac Cree Nation. The situation there was very concerning for residents and for leadership. I was in touch with leadership in the community many times over the course of the day. Hydro, cell connectivity, providing shelter for folks who had to see their homes evacuated from Tatasqueyac are all important considerations we've been working on over the past 24 hours. And then we turned to Puckedawagan, where the situation was very, very dangerous and scary for people in that community overnight. Between the 2 and 3 o'clock hours of the morning, there were many calls for help. In particular, I want to highlight local emergency management officials from the community of Puckedawagan, as well as MKO, the Manitoba Kuwait Nui Ogimakanak, who contacted us and let us know that the fire situation had worsened considerably, that the airport was being threatened, and that there was a lot of concern and then a desperate need to accelerate the movement of people out of that community. So as I said, the Canadian Armed Forces responded swiftly. They had a helicopter to do reconnaissance on the ground before 6 a.m. Today. A number of helicopters and fixed-wing crafts have been moving people out since then. We have been able to confirm that the airport was not damaged by that fire. Heavy smoke conditions have prevailed there for quite a bit of the day. And so this does provide an additional layer of complexity to what we're trying to accomplish to get people to safety. So, to our fellow Manitobans, I would say over the course of the day today, we can expect thousands of more people from the northern parts of our province to be moved out of their communities or neighboring communities to find their way to safety in other parts of Manitoba, predominantly here in Winnipeg. However, we should also highlight cities like Thompson and Portage la Prairie and the Pas, among many others, the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, the Norway House Cree Nation, the Nisitchewayasig Cree Nation, who are all welcoming people into congregate shelters.
King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived at Ottawa's International Airport on Monday morning for a quick two-day visit to the nation's capital to deliver Tuesday's throne speech to launch Canada's 45th Parliament. It was a symbolic visit with dignitaries and visitors, but in another part of the city on Parliament Hill, First Nations leaders from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba gathered to voice their displeasure that the royal visit would not include a meeting with them. Fraser Needham has more.
On Monday, Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak, Métis National Council President Victoria Pruden, and Inuit Taprit Kanatami President Nathan Obed were all part of the King's official receiving line at the Ottawa airport. He also made stops at Lansdowne Park, which included doing the ceremonial face-off for an outdoor hockey game, before later traveling to Rideau Hall to meet with Governor General Mary Simon and Prime Minister Mark Carney and to plant a tree. Well, at the same time, there's a gathering of First Nations leaders on Parliament Hill. Kyra Wilson is the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, and she said First Nations leaders outside of the AFN, MNC, and ITK should be part of the King's official itinerary.
That we always hear about nation to nation, but when we get ready for the throne speech and where the King is going to be speaking, our leadership have not been invited in those spaces. Our leadership need to be a part of these spaces.
And Treaty 8 First Nations of Alberta Grand Chief Trevor McCurdy added the exclusion is extremely disappointing.
The council, we don't have an audience with a king, and that is a problem. We have chiefs coming from all across Canada. He's flying 7 hours. Some of us flew 7 hours to be here. And some of us took a lot longer to be here. It takes time and money and effort to be here. To come this far and understand that we don't have an audience with the king is very, very disheartening.
Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations Vice Chief David Pratt said it is the King's job to remind the Prime Minister of the government's treaty obligations and commitments on reconciliation.
Meet with us, sit with our leadership, And I think we need to really have a meaningful discussion. And when he talks to Prime Minister Carney, which he does all the time as his Prime Minister, he needs to instruct him when they have those audiences and those conversations on a weekly basis to sit with our leadership and to really list with them on implementation. Grand Chief Wilson talked there a little bit about legislation. This government committed in the past to implementing UNDRIP. They need to do that in every sector. Where's the report card?
King Charles will deliver the speech from the throne for the newly re-elected Liberal government in the Senate Tuesday morning. This will be followed by a trip to the National War Memorial. Late on Monday afternoon, the government confirmed King Charles and Camilla would be meeting with the leaders of the AFN, MNC, and ITK at the end of Monday's activities. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Roughly 24 hours after he arrived in Ottawa on Monday, King Charles III wrapped up his whirlwind tour of Ottawa on Tuesday by reading the government speech from the throne in the Senate, followed by a quick stop at the National War Memorial. Indigenous peoples were a key part of both events. Here again is Fraser Needham.
The King began the speech from the throne with recognition of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, an important role Indigenous people have played in the Canadian nation.
This land acknowledgement is a recognition of shared history as a nation, while continuing to deepen my own understanding. It is my great hope that in each of your communities and collectively as a country, a path is found toward truth and reconciliation in both word and deed.
The event also featured the Ottawa River Singers and 18-year-old Manitoba Métis fiddler Morgan Grace. Interviewed later in the day, Grace said the significance of the moment was not lost on her.
That I'm so lucky to be here, and I know that it's not an opportunity that many people get, so I'm honored. And just being able to represent my family and the Métis people at home.
Former Algonquins of Bikwaknagan chief and Canadian War veteran Wendy Jocko served as the bearer for the monarch when he laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Jocko said King Charles has come to Canada during a significant moment in the nation's history.
It's also the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War and the liberation of the Netherlands. So it's quite a significant year, and it's quite significant that the King has come over for this ceremony and to meet Prime Minister Carney, because, you know, we've really walked a long way since 1812 together.
Our relationship is with the King.
Meanwhile, at a nearby event in front of the Chateau Laurier Hotel, First Nations chiefs from Western Canada responded to the speech from the throne. Southern Chiefs Organization Grand Chief Jerry Daniels said they appreciated the monarch's visit and the mention of Indigenous peoples in the throne speech, but it was a lost opportunity to meet with more First Nations leaders than just Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak.
For hundreds of years, they were having pipe ceremony with us in our lands, and that was the respect that should still continue. You can't create organizations and simply bypass the grassroots chiefs and the nations that make up this country. And so it's very important that those relationships are respected in a way, I think, that reflects what we need to be doing in this country.
The throne speech mentioned the creation of a major federal projects office, which would reduce the approval for major projects from 5 years to 2. After the speech, that remark caused Manitoba Chief Derek Neepanak to say, "Be ready, they're coming for us." Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Still to come here tonight, the impact of the ongoing trade war with the United States on a Mohawk community. Stick around. Welcome back. United States President Donald Trump launched a trade war on Canada back in February. He previously stated that the tariffs were to pressure Canada to take its border security more seriously. The Canadian-American border runs through the Mohawk community of Akwesasne. With pressure on the border from the Trump administration, our APTN reporter Savannah Craig went to see if this community's sovereignty has been impacted.
Obviously, it's the starting of the 45th parallel.
This is not just any ordinary stone in someone's backyard. It shows where the border is. The reality of Akwesasne is that 3 different borders run through it.
If you're on this side, you're in Quebec. If you're on this side, you're kind of into Ontario. And if you step back, you're in New York.
Matthew Rourke is the chief of police for the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Police, the police force on the New York side of Akwesasne. He says the community is also known for its richness in culture, arts, crafts, and sports. Smugglers take advantage of the border situation. So some know Akwesasne for the bad headlines.
The exploitation of our waterways by a very small number of people that, like less than, I think probably about 1 to 2% exploit that and bring it over certain, anything from the drugs to the migrants and that sort of thing.
Cases of human smuggling have occurred across the Akwesasne border.
Today, 2 additional bodies have been recovered,
With the death of 2 migrant families, 8 in total, on the Quebec side of Akwesasne in March 2023.
I just don't at times appreciate that Akwesasne is looked at as a black hole. It's not.
Recently, there has been a focus from both the United States and Canadian governments to protect the borders following the launch of a tariff war.
The tariffs, they're all set. They go into effect tomorrow.
Months ago, U.S. President Donald Trump said he put tariffs on Canada to pressure the country to take its border security more seriously.
Akwesasne, in our history, that border, it was never supposed to affect us.
But it does.
It's challenging at times. We have our governments on both sides and the federal government from the outside believing that the jurisdiction can come into our community at any point. So it's standing up for our rights for people from Akwesasne to travel freely in and out of our community.
Beverly Cook is the council chief of the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Council. She says there is concern over Akwesasne maintaining its sovereignty for residents on both the Canada and U.S. side due to lack of communication from the Trump administration.
We think that that's imperative to maintain, a good relationship for our people, not to be worried, because they are worried about how they're going to be treated as they, pass the border frequently every day. And so there's been a lot of concern about how the border is going to, or how the border enforcement is going to impact them.
She says she's ready to have these conversations with the U.S. government.
We are the ones that should be determining citizenship in our own government, and it shouldn't be up to somebody else to impose those restrictions on our peoples.
Until these conversations are had, the St. Regis Mohawk Council and police are working with partners outside of their community to protect the border.
We expect that when other agencies, law enforcement agencies, want to enter the territory, that they're to meet with tribal council, at least notify tribal council. And if they do that through our chief of police, that's fine too, but advance notice is always expected and usually is respected by the outside agencies. So that basically gives us control over who enters the territory. And we, exercise our sovereignty in that way.
Rourke says more funding to the tribal police will help maintain Akwesasne's sovereignty and protect the border.
Times have changed. It's a little different. You have to work with it.
He says the majority of the tribal police's funding comes from the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe's General Fund and from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, as well as grants from other American federal departments.
If we had some more funding opportunities, if this border is going to come out from this new administration, we could buy us more vessels, but also give us an opportunity to hire more police officers so we can have a more persistent and more reliable Marine unit out here, because my team's small.
He says there is competition across American tribes to access funding from the Coordinated Tribal Assistance Solicitation, also known as CTAS.
There's so many other nations who are taking their sovereignty very important and want their own police departments, that the number of people applying are getting bigger, but the pot of money is remaining the same. And that's prior to any administration.
APTN News reached out to the U.S. Department of Justice to request how much money is provided through CTAS for tribal police forces, but it did not respond before a deadline.
I know the elders here, when they do see you, they're going to tell you straight up what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong.
Rourke stresses that these challenges are affecting nearby communities as well.
It happens here, but I also got to really stress that it happens in Messina, happens in Alexandra Bay.
Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Aguasasne, Mohawk Territory.
A new episode of APTN Investigates debuts tonight right after this newscast. We'll bring you a preview after the break. Welcome back. APTN Investigates returns this week with an all-new episode. Journalist Brittany Guillot looks into the practice of medical assistance in dying, or MAID. Thousands of people are approved for medically assisted death each year, including April Hubbard. Her story offers a rare look at how people navigate love, loss, and the deeply personal decision to end their life on their own terms. Here's a preview.
Death touches every corner of life. The pain it leaves behind is so pervasive, so acute. Like a shadow, it follows us. Silent, constant. And in the deepest moments of despair, it swallows every trace of light.
Beautiful weather for a walk today, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad. It's not going to be so great tomorrow.
In 2024, Jeff Rideout met April Hubbard. Like many people today, they met online. But their love story unfolded in a way few people ever experience.
I mean, I know everybody's not the same, but my gosh, how many of us would love to have the option to be surrounded by the people we love when we go? Is there a better way?
Life is short and we only have a very brief time on this planet, so go out there and don't hold back and live life the way you want to and the way you're meant to. I do believe very much that there's some kind of spirit world out there, so even though I don't understand exactly what that looks like and how I'll be able to access it, I believe that it's a continuation and not an end.
And you can catch APTN Investigates A Good Death in about 90 seconds from now. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this weekend. For the very latest, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. Stick around for APTN Investigates. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.